Millions of Americans were sitting on their couches, snacks in hand, eyes glued to the biggest football game of the year. The Super Bowl is supposed to be an escape, a few hours where families forget about bills, inflation, rising rent, and the cost of groceries. But in the middle of all the noise, the commercials, the halftime buzz, and the excitement, something very different happened. Something that wasn't about touchdowns or trophies. It was about survivors. It was about justice. And it was about a story that could impact how powerful people are held accountable in this country. While the cameras were focused on the field, a group of Epstein survivors used the nation's biggest stage to release a major update, one that many people didn't see coming. For years, this case has lingered in the background of American life. It has been talked about in headlines, whispered about in politics, and debated across social media. But now the conversation is being pushed back into the spotlight, right when tens of millions of Americans were already paying attention. And here's why this matters to you and your family. When stories like this resurface, they don't just affect headlines. They affect trust. They affect institutions. They affect where your tax dollars go, who gets held accountable, and what kind of country your children grow up in. Because at the end of the day, justice, or the lack of it, shapes everything from laws to policies to the very systems that protect your wallet. This isn't just another news story. It's a reminder that some of the biggest decisions and revelations in America don't always happen in courtrooms or Congress. Sometimes they happen when the entire country is watching something else. And what these survivors just revealed could change the direction of this case, and possibly much more. Why the Super Bowl was the perfect moment. Think about it. The Super Bowl is one of the few events where America truly stops. It doesn't matter your political party, your job, or your income level. For one night, the country gathers around the same screens. Families, friends, and neighbors all tune in at the same time, and that's exactly why this moment was chosen. The survivors knew something important. Attention is power, and there is no bigger spotlight in the United States than the Super Bowl. Advertisers spend millions just for a few seconds of airtime. Politicians pay close attention to the messages that appear during that broadcast. And the public? They remember what they see and hear. By timing their announcement with the Super Bowl, the survivors ensured that their message wouldn't get buried under the usual political noise. They made sure that their voices would cut through the cheers, the commercials, and the halftime spectacle. It was a strategic decision, one that instantly turned a football night into a national conversation. And this kind of timing sends a signal. It tells the public that the story is not over. It tells lawmakers that people are still watching. And it reminds powerful institutions that survivors are not going away quietly. For the average American, this kind of move matters more than you might think. When survivors push their stories back into the spotlight, it can lead to investigations, hearings, or even new laws. That can mean new protections, new policies, and new accountability, all of which affect how your government operates and how your money is spent. So while most of the country was focused on the score, a much bigger message was being delivered behind the scenes, and it was designed to reach every household in America. What the survivors are saying now, the update from the survivors wasn't just symbolic, it came with renewed calls for transparency, accountability, and answers that many Americans feel they still haven't received. For years, the Epstein case has raised uncomfortable questions, not just about one man, but about the powerful networks that may have surrounded him. The survivors are now pushing for more disclosures, more investigations, and more clarity about who knew what and when. They are asking why certain details remain sealed, why some documents haven't been fully released, and why the public still feels like they only know part of the story. And here's where it becomes personal for you. When major cases involving powerful figures are left unresolved, it creates distrust. People start to question whether the system treats everyone equally. They wonder whether justice is truly blind, or whether it depends on wealth, status, or connections. That kind of distrust doesn't just stay in the courtroom. It spreads into every corner of life. It affects elections. It affects policies. It affects the decisions that determine your taxes, your benefits, and your financial future. The survivors are making it clear. They want this story fully exposed. not just for themselves, but for every family that believes the system should work the same way for everyone. And their message, delivered during the biggest TV event of the year, is now impossible to ignore. The public reaction is building fast. Within hours of the update, social media lit up. People across the country began sharing the news, debating the implications, and asking the same question: what happens next? Some Americans say the case should be reopened in a bigger way. Others are demanding the release of more documents, and many simply want clarity. They want to know that the system works, that powerful people don't get special treatment, and that survivors are heard. This surge in public attention is exactly what the survivors were aiming for, because in today's world, public pressure can move mountains. It can lead to congressional hearings. It can force agencies to release information, and it can push lawmakers to act faster than they normally would. For families watching at home, this matters more than it may seem. When major scandals resurface, they often lead to policy changes. Those policies can affect everything from funding priorities to legal reforms, and yes, even economic decisions that touch your wallet. History has shown that big public reactions can lead to big political responses, and right now, the reaction is just beginning. The political pressure is rising. Whenever a high-profile case returns to the spotlight, politicians take notice, and that's exactly what's happening now. Lawmakers from different sides of the aisle are being asked about the update, about the survivors' demands, and about what steps should be taken next. Some officials are calling for renewed investigations. Others are urging transparency and document releases. And a few are warning that the public deserves full accountability, no matter how powerful the names involved may be. This political pressure could have ripple effects. When major cases gain traction, they often lead to hearings, committee reviews, and new legislative proposals. That means taxpayer money may be redirected, agencies may shift their focus, and new policies could emerge. And once again, that connects directly to your life. Every major investigation, every new law, and every political decision eventually impacts how your money is used. It affects budgets, priorities, and the direction of government programs that families rely on. The survivors' announcement didn't just spark a conversation, it may have triggered a political chain reaction. Why this story refuses to go away. Some stories fade, others stay in the headlines for years. The Epstein case is one of those stories that refuses to disappear, and there's a reason for that. It's not just about one person. It's about a network of wealth, power, and influence. It's about the idea that some people might have operated above the law, and that's something Americans take very seriously. When people feel that justice isn't served equally, it creates a deep sense of frustration. It makes families wonder whether the system truly protects them, and it raises questions about how decisions are made at the highest levels. That's why every update, every document release, and every survivor statement gets so much attention. People aren't just watching out of curiosity. They're watching because they want reassurance that the system works, and that desire for fairness affects everything, from voting decisions to economic confidence. The legal path ahead. So what happens next? That's the question millions of Americans are now asking. Legal experts say that renewed attention could lead to several outcomes. There could be calls for additional document releases. There could be pressure for new investigations. And in some cases, there could even be new legal actions depending on what information surfaces. But the legal process is rarely fast. It involves courts, filings, reviews, and often long delays. That means the public may not get immediate answers. Instead, this story could unfold over months or even years. For families watching at home, the waiting game can be frustrating, but it also shows how important public attention is. When people stay informed and keep asking questions, it increases the chances that the truth eventually comes out. And that's exactly what the survivors are counting on. The impact on trust and institutions. One of the biggest consequences of stories like this isn't just legal, it's emotional, it's psychological, it's about trust. When major scandals resurface, people start to question institutions. They wonder whether leaders are honest, whether systems are fair, and whether their voices actually matter. And when trust drops, it can have real economic consequences. People spend less, they invest less, they become more cautious. That affects businesses, markets, and the overall financial climate. So while this story may seem distant from your daily life, it's actually tied to the bigger picture. Trust in institutions shapes the economy, and the economy shapes your job, your savings, and your future. Why the survivors chose this moment. The Super Bowl wasn't just about attention, it was about symbolism. It was about reminding the country that even in moments of celebration, serious issues still exist. The survivors wanted to send a message. The story isn't over, the questions haven't been answered, and the fight for accountability continues. By choosing this moment, they ensured that their voices would reach millions. They made sure that the conversation would restart, and they reminded the country that justice doesn't follow a schedule. It shows that survivors are still pushing, still speaking, and still demanding answers. So where does this leave the average American family? It leaves you at a moment of uncertainty, but also awareness. Stories like this shape public trust, political decisions, and the direction of the country. And those factors influence everything from policies to the economy. The Survivors Update is a reminder that accountability matters, transparency matters, and staying informed matters. Because the decisions made in these cases don't just affect headlines, they affect laws, they affect budgets, and eventually they affect your wallet, your opportunities, and your future. This story is far from over. More updates could come, more revelations could surface, and the national conversation could grow even louder in the weeks ahead. So stay alert, stay informed, and keep paying attention, because the next update could have real consequences for the country, your family, and your financial future.